Welcome, Judge Heavens. You may start whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, and good morning. It's nice to see everyone in person. As you know, I'm Al Heavens. I'm a district court judge from the 1st Judicial District. I want to thank each of you for serving on this committee and for taking the time to meet with me before today. I must let you know that at some point during all those meetings, I started wondering what it's like to be you and to serve on this committee, read through all these hundreds of pages of applications and listen to judges and people who want to be judges talk your ear off. And it made me think of a story I once heard about a judge named Sam and his wife Martha. And on a date night, they decided to go see another judge give a speech. And it was quite a long speech. And after it was over, they got in the car. And Martha said, "That judge was really boring." And Sam said, "Oh, no, that judge wasn't boring. He just should have said more about the history of this topic. And there's all these pending cases that he couldn't talk about. And knowing all that, have I changed your mind that judge was boring?" And Martha said, "Yeah, now I think all judges are boring." So I hope I haven't bored you in our meetings. I'm going to try not to bore you today. What I want to do is briskly run through 3 things that make me different from every other applicant for this position. Those 3 things are the community that I live in, my legal writing style, and how I would approach the problems that the judicial branch is currently facing. So first, on the community I live in, I'm the only candidate from the 1st Judicial District in Northeast Iowa. I'm also the only candidate who lives in a small town in a rural county. Now that matters because the law is the same throughout all of Iowa, but it plays out differently in the 1st District than it does in other districts. And it plays out differently in rural counties than it does in urban counties. And I think it's important to have a voice for Northeast Iowa and for those rural counties on the Supreme Court to understand when they make those decisions, here's how that may play out in my neck of the woods. Now currently, the Supreme Court, after Justice Appel's retirement becomes official, 3 out of the 6 justices are from Polk County, where we're at today. And if this process results in a 4th one, that means a majority of the justices are from Polk County. But 85% of people who live in Iowa live somewhere other than Polk County, and it'd be good for them to have a voice and to have someone that they could go to and ask about when things come up. Now you may be wondering, and I think it's fair to wonder, if I end up getting this job, might I just move to Polk County and then there's a majority of justices from Polk County? Well, the first thing is that a lot of the job of a Supreme Court justice doesn't have to be done here. Obviously, the oral argument has to be done here when they sit up there, but the writing, the research, the thinking about these big issues that the Supreme Court takes on, that doesn't have to be done here. That can be done anywhere, and I would plan to do a lot of that in Clayton County, where I'm from. But more important than what about the job can be done outside of Polk County is something about me that you need to know, which is that 12 years ago I met my soulmate at the Clayton County Fair when I was campaigning for county attorney, and she happens to be a dairy farmer, and her family also farms a number of acres of corn and beans. And none of that farmland is moving to Polk County, and none of those cows are moving to Polk County. So I'm pretty rooted in Clayton County, and I love being in Clayton County with my wife and my kids. And there's really no job in the world that would make me want to move away from that. So I plan to stay right where I'm at. Moving to my legal writing style, you'll notice in the writing samples that I gave you, they're significantly shorter than every other writing sample from every other candidate for this opening or perhaps from any other opening that this committee has ever filled. And that's on purpose. I work hard to make my opinions brief, to have everything that needs to be in there, but none of the junk that doesn't need to be in there. And my first drafts are often quite longer than my final drafts because I work hard to get them to be as concise as possible. And it reminds me of Ben Franklin once noted that well done is better than well said. And I think a lot of judges talk well about brevity and conciseness, and I try to speak well about that too, but I want to give you examples that I actually practice that when I write my opinions. I try to make them brief. You'll also notice that my opinions start with this introduction that includes the law, the facts, and how the law applies to those facts. I do that, and all in 75 words or less, so it can be a challenge, but I do that to help readers understand where I'm going and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And when I say readers, I'm not really thinking about the attorneys that are reading this. I'm thinking about the clients, the parties, the people who my opinion is profoundly affecting their lives. I've always believed that they should understand why I ruled the way I did, why I'm going to have this profound effect on their life. And I've always tried to write for the everyday Iowan. Just like when I wrote my county attorney columns called Justice for All, I try to write in a way that people would understand. Even if you didn't have a law degree, you could understand this. So I think that writing style is a good style to have on the Supreme Court. Now finally, my approach to judicial branch problems. I wrote a lot about that in my application. Unfortunately, we're pretty time limited today, and perhaps some of the commissioners will ask about other things that I've written, but where I want to focus on for just a minute or two is the court reporter shortage, because that's an extremely important issue to the judicial branch right now. In the 1st District, we've had a court reporter opening since January of 2021 with no applicants, and that's not the only opening in the 1st District. Across the state, there's 25 court reporters who have hit the rule of 88. That's an IPERS retirement rule, meaning that your years of service and your age have hit 88, so they could take retirement now. They're eligible, but these 25 women have decided to help stay on and help the judicial branch. To give you an idea of what it would be like if we just lost 25 court reporters, well, there's only 20 court reporters in the entire 1st District where I'm from, so that would be the equivalent of wiping out my entire district plus 5 others. And to give you an idea of how important court reporters are to the system, I call them judicial branch heroes, and that's not an exaggeration. I thought I understood how important they were, but I really didn't until I heard a motion to suppress evidence in a criminal case a while back, and that motion turned on a 3-minute conversation that the defendant had with the officer. And like most conversations nowadays, the officer's body camera caught it, and the body camera was submitted into evidence, the video. And I watched it, and when I was writing my opinion, I thought, I really need a transcript of this 3 minutes in the opinion that will help me explain why I'm ruling the way I'm ruling. And I thought, that's only 3 minutes. I shouldn't bother a court reporter to transcribe that. I'll just do it myself. So I did, and it took me over 3 hours to do that. And I think I typed pretty well, but it took me a long time. And I had to rewind and re-listen to that tape probably 50 or more times to get it right. And I took a couple things away from that experience. At first, I promptly fired myself as my own court reporter. That's one of the best decisions I've ever made as a judge. I went back to using professionals to do that at all times. But second, I noticed something in that process that I hadn't noticed before. And that's that the defendant mumbled something at multiple times during that interchange with the officer. And no matter how many times I rewound and re-listened to that tape, I could not understand what the defendant was saying. Now, when somebody mumbles something in a courtroom with a court reporter there, she stops them and says, "I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you just said. Could you repeat that?" And we get a clear record of what was said. And when a case gets to the appellate court, the first thing they have to do is figure out what happened, and they do that by reading the record. And if we ever try to replace court reporters with technology that can't stop a witness and say you mumbled that, or can't stop when a witness and an attorney are talking over each other, we'd have all these unclear records, and we wouldn't understand what happened at the lower court level, and we couldn't dispense justice if you don't know what happened. So whenever I hear someone suggest, we could save a lot of money if we just replaced court reporters with some type of new technology, I suggest to them you should walk 3 minutes in the shoes of a court reporter, because like me, that 3-minute walk might take you 3 hours, and you may come away with a much greater appreciation for what these mostly, almost all women, do for our justice system and just how important they are. So with that, I want to make sure I give the rest of my time back to you. I'd welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Judge Evans. Ms. Pearson, would you like to start?
I will. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being with us today in your application. When we met, we talked about a variety of different topics, and one of the questions I asked you is kind of why now, why the Supreme Court? Had you ever considered applying for an opening on the Court of Appeals? And you explained why you felt your talent, skills, and interests are a better fit for the Supreme Court. Would you please share that with us?
Sure, and thank you for that question. The Court of Appeals does a really important job, but one that's slightly different than what the Supreme Court does. In my application, I wrote about the racial disparity in our prison population, and the lack of court-appointed attorneys in rural counties, and of course the court reporter situation. And the Supreme Court plays an important administrative role in solving all those problems, where the Court of Appeals is more of a workhorse that's getting through these cases that are appealed, and they're much less involved in kind of that big picture state of Iowa as justice being done everywhere. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to the Supreme Court, is because they play that role. And particularly there's no one from my area who's playing that role and that I could help. So when I heard that opening was happening, and as a district court judge, I'm very familiar with what's going on the day-to-day and what these problems are, and I thought, I could really help with this. And the Supreme Court may be a good fit for me and the problems that I see and the solutions that I may be able to help with. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Judge Evans, for your application, but I have no questions for you this morning.
Thank you.
Professor Kidd.
I also have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Parrish.
Thank you for your application. No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Judge. Enjoyed our opportunity to visit, and thank you for driving all the way to Cherokee for that. My question to you is that if I'm walking down the street in Strawberry Point and I stop into the cafe and I walk in and say, "Tell me about Al Heavens," what are they going to tell me?
Well, I would hope they would probably mention that I married into a great family. My family's very well known, my wife's family, in Clayton County. They have deep roots there. They've been farming there for years. I would hope they say that he cares about this area, that I'm involved in my community. I'm sure they'd mention that I was a judge and I was a former county attorney. They may mention my columns that I wrote. I think a lot of people in the community really enjoyed my Justice for All columns that I submitted as writing samples. So I would hope that they say he's someone who cares about Clayton County and has been involved in the area and genuinely likes the people there, and I know quite a few of them, and I enjoy being there. So I'm hopeful that that's what they'd say, because there are a lot of coffees going on. If you go into any place, a gas station paired with the subway, they're probably there solving the world's problems, maybe talking about me.
Ms. Chase.
No questions today, thank you.
Professor Miller.
When we get recommendations or thoughts from people about applicants, the most common by far is from attorneys. And then we'll usually get a handful from the public, often politically connected people or people in politics. But for you, I would say, we received a number of recommendations from court staff thinking about the court reporters. So it's not just a one-way street, it's really a two-way street of court reporters and other staff who really are the unsung heroes of our system, who had really strong things to say about you. So I'm interested in your sort of relationship that you've developed with sort of the staff and the judicial system in your tenure as a judge.
Well, thank you for that question. I've always tried to take the example from former Chief Justice Cady. He had a very special way of talking to people and conveying that whatever you were doing for the judicial branch, court reporter, clerk's office, security at the courthouse, magistrate, associate judge, whatever it was, what you're doing is very important and it's appreciated. And to have empathy and to understand, what are you going through? What's been difficult about this job, and is there something that I could do? And it was a great loss for our system when Chief Justice Cady died. But I was fortunate to get to know him a little bit, and I think he set such a great example that I've tried the best I can to follow in terms of caring about everyone who's in the branch and trying to understand what they're going through. So I've tried to do that, and the letters that I've seen have been awfully nice. I hope I would live up to what they're saying about me. But there's so many great people in the Iowa Judicial Branch. I feel very fortunate to work with them.
Ms. Valentine.
Thank you. And thank you for your application, Judge. We had a great conversation and went back to our Guernsey cow roots, So I guess I'm curious. I think you were a city boy. And I'm curious what you've learned being on the farm and working with farmers, and how you think that that would be a benefit to the bench.
Sure. Well, thanks for that question. One thing that I think is a great benefit that I have is to have that connection to someone outside the legal profession. Because when I talk to my wife's family, they sometimes view things different than other judges view things and other lawyers view things. They have a great perspective on the world, and it helps shape me to get lots of different perspectives from different people. The other thing it's helped me with is to have a good perspective. I came home from work one day and thought I had a bad day, and I saw Jill, my wife, had come in, and she had had a tough delivery on a cow, and she was just a mess, with blood and placenta and all this stuff. And she said, "Oh, we had a tough delivery. The calf didn't make it. How was your day?" And I said, "Well, I guess not that bad in comparison." So, have a good perspective about life. They're just great people, and they've been so welcoming to me. As a city kid, I kind of wondered, are they going to say, "What are you doing here?" But they've been so welcoming. I feel such a part of that family, and they're such good people. It's been one of the best parts of my life marrying into that family.
Thank you.
Mr. Bevel.
Thank you. Judge Heavens, you said, at least I understood you to say something today, and I was a little troubled by it, but I think I know what you meant, but I'm not sure other people would that aren't in the system. You talked about the law playing out differently.
Right.
And if I'm an African American from Waterloo, what does that mean? And what did you mean?
Yeah. Well, part of what I mean is that, say in the first district, we have temporary custody hearings that are live as opposed to, say, the 7th district where they're all done by affidavits. So there's different policy and procedures that are done. And in rural counties, we have a court day 1 day a week or maybe 2, whereas in urban counties, they have one every day a week. But I think you're touching somewhat on the racial disparity issue, and that's always been a real importance to me. I wrote about that, and the stats don't lie, and I think it's fair for African Americans to wonder, am I being treated fairly by the system? And I do have some ideas to address that, such as more training for prosecutors and defense attorneys about making sure you're looking at all those sentencing factors when you're doing plea agreements and sentencings. There's a lot of focus on the criminal history or the nature of the offense. What about family circumstances? What about employment circumstances? What about age? If we overlook those things, we may be sending some people to prison who really shouldn't be there if you looked at all the factors. So I think it's very fair for people to feel that the system is not treating me fairly, and I think the Supreme Court's going to play an important role to say, I heard that, I hear you, I'm trying to empathize with that, even though I'm not a person, I'm not an African American person myself. I've seen the stats, I've heard your stories, and I want to figure out a way to make the system better so you don't feel that way and we don't have that problem anymore. So I understand, I've tried to understand what it's like for people to go through the system and feel it's unfair. That's important to me, and we got to fix that.
You cleared it up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for asking that.
Ms. Hanson.
Hello, thank you. It was good to talk to you again. The judicial branch, it can be overwhelming, as you've probably already seen with the first district. What is your current plan or future plan for relieving stress, for self-care? They recently had a Bar Association meeting on well-being, on taking care of yourself so that you can then relieve all the pressures that come at you on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's an important question, an important topic. Again, I go back to marrying into the dairy farming family. It helps get perspective. What I think about stress is sometimes we get the blinders on, where we're only thinking about one thing in our life that's really bothering us. And what I try to do is remember to take the blinders off. And when I come home, my kids don't care if I got reversed on appeal on something. They don't care if I made a wrong evidentiary ruling that would bother me. So sometimes just keeping life in perspective and realizing that you do the best you can every day. Sometimes we're human beings, we make mistakes, and that there's a bigger picture to life than just what we're doing every day. There's your family that love you, no matter what. And to keep that in perspective, I think, is very helpful in dealing with stress. So thank you for the question.
Well, thank you, Judge Evans. Our time is about up for today, so we thank you for your application and wish you the best.
Well, thank all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.